New second thought video 1 day ago. Let's go.
But we have to get them out rapidly, or again, we're not going to have a...
Everybody go subscribe, obviously. Apartheid version 2. And I love how white genocide conspiracy theory, they have to explain that it's not true. To second thought video. That's absolutely incredible. Don't you know that JT believes in white genocide? And by believes in white genocide, I mean he supports it 100%.
country.
Since Trump took office for his second term, we've seen a lot of this.
President Trump's massive immigration crackdown.
ICE agents are arresting nearly 800 people every day.
This nation is under distress.
Clashes over President Trump's ICE raids.
Rallies across the country opposing President Trump's agenda on the day of the president's military parade.
But amid the arrests and deportations, there's this one weird story.
Nearly 60 white South Africans were admitted into the United States. It's part of President Donald Trump's resettlement program for white Afrikaners.
You will think of the white Afrikaners. Thank you very much, Mobius, for the 9 months. I hope our beautiful baby boy is doing well.
Are being killed. They happen to be white, but whether they're white or black makes no difference to me.
It does to me. It fucking does to me. It fucking does to me. White genocide. I support it. Twitch TOS. This is obviously a joke because white genocide does not exist. So if you ban me over this, you are saying that white genocide exists, which would make you a Nazi. I'm looking at you.
Genocide that's taking
No, for real. Like, come on.
place that you people don't want to write about.
Donald Trump's administration is aiming to bring the first group of white South Africans to the United States via its refugee program as soon as next week.
What are we doing? Earlier this year, Trump brought in 59 white South Africans on Priority 1 refugee status.
The white question. The whites control the banks and the media. Why is nobody talking about the white question, eh? That's a good spin on it, by the way. That's a very good spin on it. If you look at the world and then where most wealth is concentrated, it happens to be in white countries. They tell us that the world is made for all of us, equal human beings trying to protect, help, and elevate the economic status of their families. Then why is most wealth concentrated in the hands of white people? On today's episode of Yugo Asks the Difficult Question, we will finally answer the question to end all. Do white people secretly control the world? And the answer is no. Because they do not control it secretly. They just control it. I heard that the whites killed JFK. Dude. Guys, I hear that the whites secretly ruled Adolf Hitler. I hear that the whites were the ones that supported Adolf Hitler before his rise.
Status just a few months after basically blocking new refugees from coming into the US entirely. It's almost certainly got to do with Elon, who might, maybe, perhaps, also be the rogue ex-employee who made 3 a.m. changes to Grok AI so it'd be obsessed with white genocide. We don't know for sure, I guess. But if we're not 100% about that little detail, we do know what the bigger picture is here. Trump, Elon, and the Afrikaners they're bringing in are taking advantage of a huge flaw with how liberalism handles justice. A flaw that lets white supremacists call themselves victims and somehow gets people to listen. A flaw that also, conveniently, also makes it either too late or too soon for things like reparations. We're talking about historical justice today. Howdy friends, JT from the future here. I just wanted to take a quick second to do a shameless plug for Means TV, both because it's awesome and because being a dirty communist on YouTube is looking like more and more of a losing proposition. If you're not familiar with Means, it's a
Exclamation point Means TV. You get a fucking discount.
worker-owned cooperative and explicitly anti-capitalist streaming service.
But in this case, I guess, yeah, use JT's one.
You can find everything from my videos to original series like Means Morning News to feature-length documentaries like Abby Martin's Gaza Fights for Freedom, with more amazing content being added every day. I've been working behind the scenes to help turn Means into a place that's both worthwhile for viewers as well as offering financial security for socialist creators in an increasingly reactionary political landscape. Every creator on the platform has a unique link that when anyone signs up using that link, that creator directly benefits from the subscription. I have mine in the description below, but if you really appreciate another creator's work, make sure to use their link.
What the helly? What the helly? Oh my god, what the fuck?
Instead. All of us at Means are trying really hard to build an alternative media ecosystem that is ideologically dedicated to sharing left-wing perspectives. With Means TV, we're able to...
You're on around, like, because it's a co-op, it's so cool because you... Like, obviously, you're going to make more money if somebody subscribes through your link. But if there's more subscribers in general, because it's a co-op, you get a part of the monies.
Say things the way they are. No pulling punches, no beating around the bush to trick the all-seeing eye of the algorithm. Means gives us the freedom to make the content we really want to make and say the things we really want to say. There's even a community forum where creators can engage with each other and fans right on the platform. As a little thank you for watching our channel, if you sign up with our link, or another creator's if you prefer, you can get your first month 20% off. Or for an even better deal, you can opt for the annual plan and get the whole year 20% off. A full year of Means TV will run you less than $90, which is like the cost of a single DoorDash meal these days. Every person who signs up using a creator's link is directly contributing to the financial stability of that channel and the entire cooperative media project. None of this would be possible without the generosity of viewers like you. Means TV is entirely grassroots funded, and it always will be. So if you'd like to help support our work, consider signing up for Means TV using the link below. It really does help the team here at Second Thought and dozens of principled socialist creators across the platform. Thanks for your support. All right, back to the video. On the one hand, the political goal of this refugee thing is obvious. It's white supremacy. After making immigration near impossible for black and brown people, cutting off foreign aid, and generally making life more dangerous for millions of people in the global south, that a handful of completely fine white people are the only ones getting help is sending a clear message. It's a smokescreen giving the Trump administration license to do what it values most, making it seem like only white people can integrate here so that discrimination and violence against everybody else seems justified. Callie Holloway in The Nation put it perfectly. This is an administration putting white grievance above black suffering. Because, let's be clear, white South Africans are not a persecuted group. For being only 7% of the population, whites occupy more than 62% of corporate leadership positions. 2 in every 3 black South Africans are impoverished, while just 1% of white South Africans are. Whites still own 75% of the land, and Trump and Elon's claims that white farmers are being uniquely targeted and killed or having their land taken from them is just untrue. White genocide is simply, obviously, not real. It's not true here. It's not true there. There is no apartheid version 2. South Africa is still a country where white people just have it better. So why is that apartheid v2 rhetoric being used here? Why would anybody think those still benefiting from racial privilege are victims? I think that to understand this, we should talk about the real apartheid.
As the late Prime
And also it's like the ultimate right-wing, the ultimate reveal of cards by most right-wing ideologues, which simply implies that if a minority was allowed to become a majority, we feared that they would do to us what we did to them when we were the majority, which then directly implies that they understand that when somebody is the majority, they do own more privilege than the rest, and therefore will often institute systemic means of violence and exploitation against them. So a right-winger always exists in this sort of limbo between privilege does not exist, but also we do not want to lose our privilege by becoming a minority. Therefore exhibiting inherent anti-scientific analysis of how society functions, but also, more importantly, incredible hypocrisy. Thank you very much, Pixarino, for the 13 months. Thank you very much, my friend, and all the other subscribers. That's why I really like throwing that at them immediately. Like, if somebody is talking about how it's very problematic that, the natives of the country are no longer in power, obviously not alluding to Native Americans and so on, but whites, but this can also happen in Western Europe, etc., etc. So the natives are going to be outbred. You just ask them, but why is that bad? And then they will say, because when the non-natives are dominant, they are going to fuck us natives up. And then you follow that with, but right now you're the majority. Are you saying that you're fucking them up? And they'll be like, are you saying that you have more privilege than the minorities? Are you saying there is systemic injustice directly hitting the minorities because they happen to be minorities? And because you own more power because you are the majority? They immediately go, and then they obviously, you all can expect what the switch up is. The switch up is just good old bigotry and racism. But no, we are the garden, they are the jungle, our cultures are incompatible. And then you ask them, what do you mean they're incompatible? And it always leads to, again, like just plain old fucking bigotry and racism. They are inherently barbaric, we are inherently civilized. They cannot be adapted to our way of life. Why can't they? Then they start talking about genetics. And you come back to lizard people in the ground. It's as cliche and classic as it can get.
Minister Dr. Henrik Vervoort put it, we want to keep South Africa white.
It's white ethno-nationalist talking points and projection. They also live in an inherent contradiction since they take extreme pride in colonialism, yet at the same time they're extremely scared of the things they claim to be defending to be done to them. 100%. It is the inherently internalized understanding, but very often internalized, of what, quote-unquote, your people has done, quote-unquote, to other peoples, which informs an irrational fear that a said exploitation will happen to your people once they come. More honest right-wingers like, Tucker Carlson and so on will openly talk about how we are being colonized, right? We are being colonized by foreign entities and so on. Well, obviously not being able to then admit to the fact that their colonization of other entities was bad. It's as simple of a definition of right-wing hypocrisy as it can get. That's why it has to stand on what in simplified theory here we call D&D in real life. At the end of the day, right-wing quote-unquote theory, especially racialized theory, but also even gender theory, and I'm talking right-wing, not gender theory by itself, right-wing interpretations of gender, race, ethnicity, etc., have to believe in unscientific conceptions of what one's outwards appearance implies about one's behavior. They have to believe that somebody that looks different, Homo sapiens that looks different to another Homo sapiens because they have, more melanin or bigger lips, that somehow makes them strange, incompatible, and inherently mentally different. Which is D&D, which is orcs versus elves versus snake people. This is not how planet Earth or our species work. So TLDR, when pushed to the wall, a right-winger will always result to just making shit up. That is most of right-wing ideology. Actively and constantly just making crazy shit up and just going for it. The only right-winger that is semi-honest is, the right-winger that believes in might makes right. So it's either us or them, but they're also to an extent hypocritical because they don't know how to answer the question of why does it have to be us versus them. They always just answer because it's human nature, because it's always been like that. Unless we strike first, we will eventually be subsumed and destroyed and annihilated. But you just literally, when you ask them, but why does it have to be like that? Again, it lacks any intellectual basis or analysis. Their answer is just, oh, it's always been like that. It's the same like asking somebody who was loyal to the king and the aristocracy during the French Revolution, but why do you support the fucking king and the aristocracy? What the fuck? You're the fucking plebeian. And their answer would be, oh, it's just because that's how it always was. Right-wing ideology is always constantly exists in the denial of one's true power. It is cuckoldry expanded as a net of ideology over the masses. It is cuckoldry.
Keeping it white can mean only one thing, namely white domination. Not leadership, not guidance, but control.
Can you please stand still? I'm trying to scan your mask with a QR code scanner. Also, sorry I missed your last few streams. No worries. I wasn't here for a week. This is the first stream in literally 7 days. So no worries, my friend. I was touching grass for 3 days for my birthday. And yes, I celebrate my birthday for 3 days, 2-3 days sometimes. This time it was with 25 people. It was grand. And they repress thinking for yourself, allowing you to question these things and ask why. Absolutely. Because they even give answers when they do not repress it. Big hangover? No. I didn't stream yesterday because I needed to get over it. Yugo, this is the biggest example in reference to what you say. Let us see it, my friend. EU Vice President Borrell, Europa is a garden, the rest of the world is a jungle. Absolutely. I even used that specific quote in the in my, theoretical overview of the particular issue. What the fuck is making those sounds? There's a thing making sounds in my fucking room. It is very annoy. Oh shit. All our subs go to alcohol for Yugo and his friends. I mean, does that motivate you to subscribe more or less? But yes, you guys paid for a grand birthday. Which, like, what else would you want?
You probably know most of this already, but apartheid was the system of white minority rule in South Africa that lasted from 1948 to 1994, though segregation and white supremacy were around for a lot longer. Under apartheid, that segregation was further codified, enforced, and made more extreme. Black South Africans were physically kept apart from whites, segregated into what were called Bantustans, dependent states that excluded black people from South African citizenship. Non-whites were forced out of their homes, their land, and politics entirely. The choice for most was either living in these neglected reservations or staying in the white areas, most often illegally and facing severe discrimination. Interracial sex and marriage were forbidden. Non-white South Africans were forced to work for white South Africans for low pay. And everyone who publicly opposed this system was either killed, as 21,000 people were, or disappeared and detained without trial, as over 80,000 people were. There's a lot more awful stuff to apartheid than we can get to right now. But it's important that you have some idea of what happened to know that to get past all this and to get to justice, South Africa did something called Truth and Reconciliation. When you go from a deeply discriminatory society, full of brutal supremacist violence, you do have to ask yourself, how can we ever move forward? For liberals, the answer was the TRC.
Welcome to the first special report on the Truth Commission. The Commission's...
And there's always the like I like to call it colonial hypocrisy. when a colonial project is relatively successful and all the quote-unquote natives have been exterminated or subsumed into the wider population, the colonial status quo system says, "Oh, this is now past. Why do we have to talk about something previous generations have done? Let's just continue on with our lives." But when it happens in reverse, and for example, a native population manages to overcome a colonial project, such as, for example, to an extent in South Africa with post-apartheid, and when they're like, "Oh, we're taking back power," they're like, "No, we gotta slow that one down, because we gotta talk about how." It was the grandparents of these people that did this, not these people themselves. We gotta chill out a little bit. Come on, man. What the fuck are you talking about?
First hearings were held here in the East London Town Hall, and it's been a week of raw emotion.
To move beyond apartheid, the goal of the TRC was to establish a culture of human rights in South Africa. Like in Chile and Argentina before, liberals believed that to get past the evil those societies went through, there needed to be a clear cultural acknowledgement that evil would be firmly left behind. And getting to a consensus that the past was evil begins by agreeing that the evil is past. They did that through public investigations and trials, meant to reveal the extent of violence under apartheid and prosecute some of its most prominent figures. Importantly, the goal was to prosecute as few people as absolutely necessary. Only the amount that would make the past system universally immoral and give space for victims to lay their grievances bare, while showing that the new society was different. These trials would not be a purge or a thorough investigation of guilt. They were there to create a culture of human rights and the rule of law. If some people escaped judgment, that was fine, as long as they now accepted that the rules had changed. In that way, the TRC built a vision of justice that was almost entirely forward-looking, a vision of justice in which everyone, except only the most vile racists, could agree that apartheid was evil. But importantly, a vision of justice that did not ask the white beneficiaries of apartheid to give up anything material. They were just asked to have a little compassion. The TRC asked of white South Africans, and everyone else today, to imagine themselves as little more than well-intentioned witnesses to evil. People who, hypothetically, would have done something if they could have, regardless of if they actually did. By simply...
Like, even if you tried, you couldn't imagine a more soft approach to this issue. Like, to combating and getting rid of apartheid when it comes to South Africa, even if you tried.
Acknowledging evil, it's basically as if they had. In this way, the TRC did two important things for liberal justice. It relieved white anxiety, and it reduced the victims of apartheid suffering in the present to basically just trauma. Not a continued suffering under compounding inequality, just trauma that is effectively healed when all these compassionate, would-be justice warriors feel bad, without them ever needing to agree to restitution. Meanwhile, post-apartheid South African society could continue to have the same hierarchy as before. This is the important bit about the way that justice in South Africa took place.
And this is very important. Like, it's very important from a theoretical perspective to mention that if you're attempting to quote unquote decolonialize or attempting to get rid of a particular discriminatory social system in place after the discriminatory social system has been in place for many decades, you have to also address the class issue. What am I talking about? Okay, sure, we are removing race laws from the United States of America, let's say, which they to an extent did, right? Like, okay, slavery no longer exists, but slavers that have generated billions upon billions of dollars in that time's money still control incredibly overwhelming power over non-slave owner whites. But don't even get me started on how much power they hold over just yesterday released slaves. So while the legality has changed about whether somebody can be a slave or not, or whether somebody is human or only 2/3 human, well, that has changed the power disbalance because of how much money was accrued through that judicial system of discrimination. When not addressed, is still going to be used to proceed with discrimination. Apologies, right? You can't half-ass it. You really can't half-ass it. What is the alternative to that, though? A lot of people would be like, okay, we will hyper-racialize it and then like hyper-punish people that on average were the members of the oppressive class, etc., etc. That, to an extent, could work, but it would just move money and capital away from them to other large capital owners of now the new ethnicity that gets to run things. And that new ethnicity that runs things, sure, will not exploit their employees on a basis of racial bias, but it will still make them employees and therefore inherently subservient. There is no way to get rid of subservience without getting rid of the class dichotomy that arises from any liberal and very often very, very, very well-intentioned set of regulations which alleviates or changes or eliminates previous systems of discrimination. So TLDR, yeah, you in South Africa, yeah, you can say, okay, there is no racial difference between whites and blacks in South Africa, but the whites already have all the fucking money and most of the fucking land, so they're just gonna continue living it up, while the rest, okay, will no longer be defined as genetically inferior, but will nonetheless live in a world very similar to the one that they thought they were escaping. Because the power imbalance sure can come from laws and from the systems put by the state down on the wider population, but capital can always overcome those. So while racial discrimination can be removed from the equation as a judicial system, it can still be it can still racial discrimination can still continue because of the inherent ownership of capital by the previous racial category, which was defined as superior.
Nice. Thanks to events like the TRC, those who benefited from apartheid could think of themselves as completely distinct from the process of its perpetration. And on the other side, they could think of the victims of apartheid as either completely innocent and unthreatening, those who would agree to the blank slate reset, or dangerous, those who would ask for more than just thoughts and prayers. And that second camp could be permanently imagined as a lingering threat. They could be demonized. They don't fit into the neat model of the TRC. They don't fit into the new culture of human rights and legal order. They were asking for too much. They were a threat. And in that way, white beneficiaries could imagine themselves as future victims. They could equate the suffering of innocent victims of apartheid, those they no longer feared, with their own imagined future suffering at the hands of those.
Exactly, that's what we talked about earlier, but it also gives them the ability to say, yo, just get over it. We just got rid of the discriminatory systems. Why don't you lift yourself up by your fucking bootstraps? And then, because it takes, fucking 10 generations for you to do it as a member of a particular ethnicity in a capitalist system, they can go back to pointing out how, for now 3 generations, they haven't been able to lift themselves up by their bootstraps. Maybe that means that they are genetically inferior, or that they are stupid, or that their culture is welfare oriented, etc., etc. So you have You have huge concentration of wealth inside of a system where there is judicial discrimination, right? Then the judicial discrimination disappears, but the ownership of capital still remains in the hands of people that made a lot of money from said judicial discrimination. The other people are free on paper, I guess. A couple of generations pass. Those guys who made a lot of money from slavery are now even richer and even richer and even richer. And the other guys, well, from generation to generation, on average, have increased their economic output and how much they can make. They are still very, very far from reaching the point of these guys. So then these guys say, what the fuck are you complaining about? The fact that you haven't managed to quote unquote get good for 2-3 generations implies that maybe there's something wrong with you genetically or culturally, or you're just, fucking minorities gonna minor type of shit, right?
Who didn't accept that the TRC had definitively settled the question of what to do about injustice. After all, why should there be a revolution if all these beneficiaries agreed that what happened was bad and that the perpetrator—
Check out Cuphead Socialists' mutual aid link, please.
Those who actually did apartheid had already been dealt with.
Throw some help.
Justice was served, even if things didn't look all that different. Knowing that they'd never have to lose anything, they could calmly call out the past and permanently block any restitution by weaponizing white fears. The narrative you're left with is that redistribution in 1994 would have just been too soon. It could have jeopardized the peace process. And today, of course, it's too late. Why would we make people who had nothing to do with apartheid pay? It's not a very different argument from what we hear in the US. Bringing up slavery is dredging up the past. It's too late for reparations. Segregation's been over for generations. All that does is divide us. How do we know whose ancestors were slaves and whose ancestors were slaveholders? Have you heard about the Irish? They were slaves too, don't you know?
Now, to be clear, as if it's necessary, slavery is evil. But let's be honest, up until 150 years ago, when a group of brave Americans fought and died to finally put an end to it, slavery was the rule rather than the exception around the world, and had been for thousands of years, sadly.
This rhetoric is everywhere when we talk about historical injustice. The evil is in—
It's also untrue when it comes to the United States. Just Google when most slave-owning entities or countries or states or civilizations, whatever you want to call them, got rid of slavery in legislature and compare it to when the Americans did, okay? There's, I don't know, maybe a couple of fucking centuries in between when they did it and when the Americans did it.
In the past. It bears on the present, sure, but because we're not responsible ourselves, the best we can do is try to have fair rules from now on. This way of thinking about justice is flawed, but we should start by acknowledging that it's coming from an accurate insight. The history of every society is one of horrible injustice. Violence, exploitation, discrimination, and suffering are staples of the historical canon, and there isn't one single objective point where things were fair that we can try to rewind to. Every point in history is following and followed by injustice. It's also true that no one in the present has agency over the evils that their ancestors either enacted or suffered from. But just because those things are true doesn't mean we should limit justice to this idea that the worst thing about the past is that it causes trauma in the present, and that white guilt, the rule of law, and human rights are the best we can offer. Just because we can't have an arbitrary baseline to which we can return doesn't mean that we shouldn't strive for more than thoughts and prayers. The answer to historical injustice isn't pretending that we're all on level footing already. The answer is material equality. If most inequality today is a result of history, and most of history was bad, equality is a solution for all the injustices we inherit. This is particularly necessary because of how capitalism works. The capitalist model of finance and growth rewards those who start out with more, regardless of why they do. That anyone inherits privilege and wealth under capitalism means that
the inherent insanity of capitalism is that capital can generate capital.
We're constantly on track to bigger and bigger gaps between the rich and the poor based on the worst atrocities people before us have committed. Evil is not past. It's constantly accumulating and growing. It's the very nature of the present. and many liberals might agree. Of course, inequality is unjust, but you know what they think is worse? That revolutionaries may try to do anything about it beyond pretending good intentions will fix everything. Instead of only dealing with justice at the level of trauma, revolutionary justice implicates beneficiaries directly in the process of restitution. It doesn't say beneficiaries and perpetrators are the same, but it does demand that those who just got lucky should not be allowed to continue to make gains and widen the gap on the back of that historical injustice without material concessions. If you don't deserve to have things taken away from you because you personally didn't do anything wrong, you don't deserve to use it for personal gain either. Meaning, if things just worked out for you, your family set you up, you were born into high status, fine, it's not your fault, that's great. The very minimum of justice, though, is that there are conditions on what happens now. Your wealth cannot grow at the expense of others. You can absolutely still make money, but only if we close that gap in the process.
Thank you.
You invest some of your money well, it'll be taxed and used for universal programs. You have a ton of land, you're not getting more than you can use. You're on Wall Street and you gambled too hard? We'll prevent the crash if and only if it'll mean everyone is better off afterwards. We're not doing austerity. The very rich will pay something to everyone else for things to return to normal. If we can never pinpoint the exact amount of historical suffering that everyone is a victim of, but we do know that it's responsible for so much being awful, there is a solution to that doesn't just ask us to pretend that the heir to an emerald mine can just get whatever he wants. This reasonable path to justice is a difficult pill to swallow for liberals, who would much prefer that those who want justice are either completely pacified and content with thoughts, prayers, and white guilt, or bloodthirsty guerrillas who can't tell the difference between perpetrators and beneficiaries. In the liberal narrative, those who want justice are either useless or terrifying. And as a result, all those who benefit through no fault of their own can stall equality forever by playing on the fear that justice could, maybe, we don't know, be just as bad as what it's trying to rectify. Apartheid version 2. But those are not the only options. Privilege is not something that people own. It's a relative status. And that relative status is not a right that anyone is entitled to. If you have wealth held in assets that are only valuable so long as everyone keeps going along with capitalism and doesn't make too much of a fuss, there is a cost to that inequality. Students could always stop paying their loans back. Mortgage payments can be paused. Boycotts can last pretty much forever. If the whole process of transitional justice was based on doing the least possible to get political stability, what if political stability suddenly depended on much more than admissions of guilt? What if it actually depended on real material equality? So much.
And that is the main difference between a liberal and a socialist, pretty much. Okay, a liberal is absolutely okay with doing public performance art where, I don't know, a black lady, I'm talking about the States, a black lady puts like a chain around his neck and he's willing to like walk around in downtown New York for a day. But a liberal will obviously reject the idea of a workers' own society because it will inherently, truly readjust who owns what and how much.
History led us to where we are today. Why should only a few keep the gains of injustice?
Good video. Excellent video. Excellent pitch. Really good way where he took a concept that, for example, a lot of white people will probably click on in order to be like, herder, why do we got to talk about reparations all the time? And answer with, we don't have to talk about reparations if there wasn't this particular class of people hogging all the fucking wealth. Most of the issues that come from capitalism are capitalism is a system upkeeps the inherent privileges gained by people who had privilege in systems which had judicial discrimination as as a starting point. So if you wanna get rid of that, you just get rid of the system that upkeeps them being able to make more money from the money that their parents or grandparents or great-grandparents made off of the backs of slavers. It's just a win-win pitch. The Second Thought guy has good videos. Yeah, he's pretty chill. You should get together with him. You guys could make great content for OnlyFans. Oh yeah, we already do, but it's secret. We wear masks on it. In my fucking geography class, when it's about Africa, Asia, or any periphery countries, it's always they're poor because of corruption and high inequality. For Eastern Europe, it's, of course, the boogeyman, communism. And then they wonder why we have racists in our school and in general, and they keep fucking saying we can never stop racism with such defeatist shit. Yeah, dude, you gotta... they always explain current levels of... let's call it economic inefficiency, because that's what it is. So few owning so much and so many owning so little is an inefficient economy. You don't even have to talk about equality or whatever, or ethics or morality. You can even just talk about efficiency, and it is inherently inefficient when it works so badly for the majority of people around the world.
We will all go together when we go. What a comforting fact that is to know. Universal bereavement.